In a small, sun-drenched village, on the edge of the African savannah, there lived a boy named Kofi. He was 10 years old, with curious eyes that sparkled like stars, and a heart that always seemed too big for his chest. Kofi lived with his grandmother, who often told him, "Compassion is what makes us human, and humility keeps us grounded." One morning, as Kofi walked to fetch water from the communal well, he spotted a dog lying under the shade of a baobab tree. The dog was thin, its ribs showing through its dusty coat. Its eyes were dull with exhaustion. Flies buzzed around its ears, and its tail barely wagged when Kofi approached. "Poor thing," Kofi murmured, kneeling a feet away. The dog flinched but didn't move. Kofi remembered what his grandmother had said about stray animals. They always survive by their wits, but they are often too scared to trust. Still, he couldn't leave the dog like that. He opened the small pouch tied to his waist, where he had a piece of bread his grandmother had given him for breakfast. Breaking into small pieces, he placed them on the ground and stepped back. The dog sniffed the air, hesitated, and then crept forward to eat. Kofi smiled, his heart swelling with warmth. The dog ate cautiously, its eyes darting. Kofi stayed still, careful not to scare it. When the last crumb was gone, the dog sat back on its haunches, staring at Kofi as if trying to decide whether to trust him. "You must be hungry," Kofi said softly. "Wait here." He ran back to the well, filled his gourd with water, and returned to the baobab tree. The dog's ears perked up as Kofi set the gourd down and stepped away again. Slowly, the dog approached and began to drink, its tongue lapping noisily. Kofi felt a pang of sadness. "Where is your family, little one? Do you have no one to care for you?" The dog didn't answer, of course, but Kofi imagined it must have a story, a life before it ended up here. Alone and afraid, he decided then that he couldn't leave the dog behind. "I'll take you home," he said. Standing up, the dog backed away, unsure. "It's okay," Kofi said. Crouching again, he extended his hand, palm up, as his grandmother had taught him when dealing with frightened animals. The dog sniffed his hand, its nose cold and wet, then gave a tentative leaf. Back at the small hut Kofi shared with his grandmother, he introduced the dog. "Grandmother, I found a friend," he said. His grandmother frowned at the skinny creature. "Kofi, we barely have enough for ourselves. How will we feed it?" Kofi's heart sank, but he looked at the dog, who was now sitting quietly by his feet, as if it understood what was said. "I'll share my food," Kofi said. "I'll work harder. Please, grandmother." His grandmother sighed, her weather face softening. "Compassion is a gift, Kofi, but it comes with responsibility. If you are willing to care for this dog, then so be it. But remember, humility means knowing your limits." Kofi nodded honestly. "I'll take care of it, I promise." Days turned into weeks, and the dog, whom Kofi named Tula, grew stronger. Tula followed Kofi everywhere, whether he was fetching water, tending a small garden, or gathering firewood. In return, Tula seemed to protect Kofi, barking at snakes and strangers who ventured too close. One afternoon, while walking to the well, Kofi saw a group of boys from the village throwing stones at a bluebird caught in a thorn bush. The bird flapped its wings desperately, unable to escape. "Stop it!" Kofi shouted, running towards them. The boys laughed. "Why do you care? It's just a bird." "It's alive, just like us," Kofi said firmly. He stepped between the boys and the bird, shielding it with his body. Tula the dog growled, standing beside Kofi. The boys muttered insults but eventually left. Kofi carefully untangled the bird from the thorns, wincing as its sharp edges pricked his fingers. Once free, the bird flapped its wings and flew away, disappearing into the blue sky. "Why do you always do that?" one of the boys called from a distance, "helping things that don't matter." Kofi looked down at Tula, who wagged her tail as if to say she understood. He thought of how weak and scared Tula had been when he first found her, and how she had blossomed with a little kindness. "Everything matters," Kofi said quietly, more to himself. That evening, Kofi's grandmother watched as he shared his dinner with Tula. She saw how the dog leaned against Kofi. Her trust in him is absolute. "You've done well, Kofi," she said. "But remember, true compassion doesn't seek reward, and true humility doesn't seek praise. You've given this dog a new life, but she's giving you something too, a lesson in love and loyalty." Kofi nodded, stroking Tula's fur. He realized his grandmother was right. In helping Tula, he had found a sense of purpose and joy that made their small, simple life richer.